to acknowledge my comrades on this panel. And I want to start off with a quote that I stole from Brother Ralph. And one of the things he says is, Black people live their lives attempting to protect themselves from the cruelties and day-to-day hurts that the greater society inflicts. For some, this means blocking out and dealing with an unreal world and lying about what's happening, and ultimately trying to protect their fragility of their humanity. So when this happens, the reality of people's lives is more painful than the fictitious belief structures that fake news presents to them. So when we hear Chairman Yeshiteli talk about how, or anyone talk about how the Democrats could use this issue of Russia television and all of this, or someone sabotaging Hillary Clinton, that is the attempt of Black people to deny reality. And what we are trying to do in the Black is Back Coalition is to tell them what a very famous Black warrior said: you can run, but you can't hide. So you can run to a charter school, but you can't hide because the charter school is controlled by a corporation. You can run from critical race theory, which tries to educate you to the fact that the Dutch East India Company, which was responsible for buying and selling the first slaves in Jamestown in the 1600s, was a corporation. You got a corporation responsible for slavery in the 1600s. You have a corporation in the form of Belinda Gates that you can bet your last piece of rent money on. Eric Adams will tap on the shoulder to try to create a charter school to destroy the public school system. He has said it, he has promised it. Those of us who live in Brooklyn, New York City, we know the results of his partnership with the real estate interests in this city. So the purpose of this discussion is to get you to understand that we can win, but we can only win by uniting together around the issues of anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism. This is one of the most complex capitalist empires in the history of the world. And there's no question it will fall, because all empires fall. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall. But what you must understand is you're the bottom rung of the ladder. They're gonna fall on you first. You will not have housing. That's why the homeless statistics are off the charts wherever there are Africans in this country. Now let's deal with the issue of education. And I'm fast forwarding here. We are talking about police terror. It's a misnomer. It is not police terror. It is the army of occupation. They started out as slave catchers. They have never been anything else. They are the original slave patrols. If you look at the statistics on what is happening with Black children in this country, according to New York City Jericho, police hurt thousands of teenagers every year, and a striking number of them are Black children, specifically Black girls. A review of data from 6 large police departments around the country reveals that nearly 4,000 young people ages 17 and under experienced police violence through 2015 through 2020. Almost 800 of the children and teens, roughly a fifth of the total, were Black girls. White girls were involved in only about 120 cases, representing only 3% of the use of force incidents involving minors. The investigation looked at racial disparities in use of force cases in Chicago, sound familiar? Minneapolis, sound familiar? Columbus, Ohio, and Portland, Oregon. So with that statistic, I am amazed that there are people who are talking about the Black on Black crime of the youth in our so-called inner cities. Every person who studies psychology or sociology understands that if you cannot fight your oppressor, you will internalize their hatred. So the work of slavery is not done until it becomes self-perpetuating. If we do not teach our children, our young, that they have the right to self-defense and self-determination, they will turn that anger in on themselves and us. It's a no-brainer. You should not be taking the guns from the youth. You should be teaching them who to aim at. That's the issue. Now, when you talk about critical race theory in the school, I'll never forget the day we took our entire school to see a play. This is an elementary school, 1st grade through 6th grade, about Frederick Douglass and his struggle for freedom. They all rose up when Frederick Douglass was fighting back and said, kill him, kill him, kill him. You don't have to teach them how to fight. You have to teach them who to fight. And this is what community control of education does. Now, Sister Lisa, how many minutes do I have left?
Continue.
Okay, I'll continue. Assume you can still hear me. The reality is, what is community control of education? You may think you have defunded the police, but when the COVID money came to New York City, and my comrade Charles Barron will validate this, they spent an increase of money for policing in the schools. That policing wasn't because the children are out of control. That policing was to terrorize them and to create an atmosphere of self-defeat within them. Now, how can I validate and prove my point with you? And what I am hoping will come out of this is that you will join me and join the education working group. And I will tell you how you can do that. One of the top news that came out recently is that a suburban county near Nashville, Tennessee, illegally locked up and in at least one instance used bogus charges to justify the statistics. They sent 7 kids to jail because 1st graders, they refused to break up a fight. They went to a prison. They were terrorized in that prison. According to ProPublica, Rutherford County, Tennessee, used what county officials called a filter system, which left it up to the discretion of the jailers to decide whether a child arrested and taken to juvenile detention center should be released. Tennessee law only allows for children to be held under specific circumstances, but under the recent state laws and actions in Tennessee, scores of Black children have been incarcerated, many of them in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And nothing was done about this, and this is illegal. This story was released, I believe it was released, the Forbes, www.forbes.com. You can follow up on this story. What I am saying to you is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. Where was the community to defend these children? If we do not defend these children, they will not defend us when it is their turn. These so-called neo-colonial, as Brother Ford called them, Black misleadership class people, didn't just come from nowhere. They came because we don't control the majority of the narrative in these public schools. There are laws on the books that give parents control over the public school system. That's why they want to make them charter schools. Don't you get it? Because they understand that parents don't have the same rights in a charter school that they have in a public school. When you control your public school, you are doing what Brother Charles Barron mentioned. You're taking those billions of dollars and you're putting them back in the hands of the communities that need them. Another statistic that you need to be aware of is that from the get-go, Black and brown schools have been underfunded in America. Now, who is responsible for the underfunding? Chairman Yeshitela has been trying to tell you. You have what they call a two-party system. It is a mythology. There's no such thing as a moderate Democrat. They're Dixiecrats. If you went to school and understood what a Dixiecrat was, Fannie Lou Hamer would be a real person to you, because they beat Fannie Lou Hamer almost to death for trying to vote in the South. Dixiecrats did that. So we have to understand the role of the political party in our lives. They dispense the goodies. When you control a political party network, those institutions funnel down the budget. And one of the largest budgets in New York City is the education budget. And it is especially so under COVID. So I don't know how much time I have, but many people see COVID-19 as a disaster, whether you think it is deliberate genocide, germ warfare, regardless of that issue. I see COVID as an opportunity because there is so much money coming into the education system that New York City has still not released for education. It is the role of any city council, especially a Black one, to demand that the underfunding and the unequal funding in Black and brown communities stop and cease immediately. When you control that budget, Charles Barron has told you more than once, you are controlling contracts. It is very significant to me, and I will never forget as a librarian. One of the first things Bloomberg did when he came into power as mayor was he said, you cannot have a contract with the Board of Education if your company makes under $2 million. What that meant was all the small mom and pop businesses, especially Dare Books, which was a Black-owned bookstore, lost their contracts. So when you talk about the fight over critical race theory, look at Tennessee. Look at the guy who won in Virginia. It's not about critical race theory. It's about the difference between saying colonialism in the modern day world is slavery and proving it, and saying slavery was good for the niggers because it civilized them. If you don't want that kind of stuff taught in your public schools, then take them back. Because if you go to the charter school and your child insists on being African and wearing his culture proudly, he will be suspended because he will not tolerate racism. You raise your child to have a sense of himself and his African self, and he goes into a charter school, he'll be kicked out quicker than you can say, Jack be nimble. So I urge you, join the education working group because police terror is going to increase, especially in the elementary school level. Look at the state of Tennessee and document for yourself what's going on in your school. When you have issues around the unequal suspension of Black and brown children in your school building, contact Black is Back. Thank you.